Good morning. A very warm welcome to all of you. I'm Kavita. I will be teaching Anthropology Optional along with Tirumurugan sir. Since you have already finished few classes, I'm sure you have a fairly good idea about what Anthropology Optional is. Still, because this is my first class, I prefer to give you a brief introduction about Anthropology Optional, what is the subject all about, how to approach it, what are the different tips and tricks which you can use to make better answers, and then finally I shall begin with my first topic which I am going to discuss today, anthropology. So I'm pretty sure most of you all wouldn't have even heard that there's a term called as anthropology or there's a subject called as anthropology until you started preparing for civil services examination, isn't it? So when you started preparation for civil services examination and you took out the list of optional subjects, trying to find out which optional subjects suits you the most, then in the very beginning of the list, you would have found the subject called as anthropology. So then you would have started wondering, what is the subject anthropology? What does it mean? What does it deal about? Is it suitable for me? Or then you start finding about more about it and you get a good fair amount of ideas and knowledge about what the subject is, and finally you're here because you have chosen the anthropology optional. So now let me give you a brief introduction about the subject. Anthropology is derived from the Greek word anthropos and logos. So the word anthropology is derived from the Greek word, the root words anthropos, which means human being or man, and logos, which means study. Okay, so anthropology, the word anthropology is derived from the root words anthropos and logos. Anthropos means human beings and logos means study. So the word anthropology means study of human beings. That is, this anthropology is the subject in which we study about ourselves, and that is what makes the subject so interesting, isn't it? What can be more interesting than studying about our own self, isn't it? So in anthropology, we will be studying human beings across space and time. So what we mean when we say space and time? So here we will be studying human beings from all over the globe at a particular point of time. Here we can call anthropology as a holistic subject. It is rightly called as a holistic subject because here we do not study only a single aspect of human beings. We are studying human beings from all different, from all aspects, from all views, from all angles. And that is why anthropology is called as a holistic subject, or it is a subject of holism. Anthropology is rightly called as a holistic subject. What do you mean by holistic or holism? See, if you see medical graduates, okay, people who are studying MBBS, they will be studying human beings from the physiology part, right? What is the heart? What is the lungs? What is the kidney? How do each of these function? How are they connected in the body? And what will happen if something goes wrong? And all this. So they are studying human beings from the physical aspect. If you consider genetics, they are studying human beings from the at the genetic level. That is, what are chromosomes, what is DNA, what are nucleic acids. So what will happen, how DNA is formed, what will happen if suppose in a DNA structure there is an alteration of what are chromosomes. Suppose there is addition of chromosomes or suppose there is deletion of chromosomes, what will happen, what are the diseases that will be inherited. So what are diseases which can be inherited according to which pattern? So based on Mendelian laws of genetics, like that, they will be studying human beings at the genetic level, at the molecular level. This is what the genetists do. If you consider psychologists, right? So psychologists study the human mind, right? So how do human beings think? What are the so based on that, so basically they study the human mind. So if you see historians, they study the history of humankind, like evolutionary aspects to certain extent, and then how evolution happened over a period of time and so on. So like this, if you consider any subject, like say sociology, sociology studies about our society. So what are the components of our society? What are the social institutions like marriage? So what kind of marriages are there? What is religion? Okay, what is the meaning of family? What's the meaning of kinship? So all this they are studying from that is in sociology they are studying the human beings from social point of view. So like this, in each of the subjects, if you consider, they are studying human beings from only a single perspective. That is, medicine graduates study only the physiology, and psychologists study only the mind, and then genetics study only at the molecular level, at the genetic level, and sociologists study the environment, the sociology, the society in which we are living. So like this, each subject is skewed, towards studying only a particular aspect of human beings, whereas it is only the subject anthropology where we study human beings from all points of view. Here we discuss to certain extent physical anthropology. We study about the evolution of human beings also. That is how human beings evolved from primitive apes to present day Homo sapiens sapiens, Australopithecus, like that. What happened in each according to each geological time scale, how they evolved. And we are not just studying the physical evolution, we are also studying the cultural evolution also. So culture is a very important aspect in anthropology. We have exclusive chapters in studying the culture. So culture is very important in anthropology. So we are studying the physical part of human beings, we are studying their mind, we are also studying the society, right? Here in anthropology also we will be discussing marriage, family, kinship, about religion, about political institutions and so on. And like this, we are discussing and studying human beings from all perspectives. That is why anthropology is called as a holistic subject, and that is what makes anthropology so unique. Because if we are studying only one perspective, it becomes boring and redundant, isn't it? Because here it is a fusion of so many subjects. It makes us, know human beings in a much better way in understanding his culture. Why is human beings behaving like this? Okay, so not just studying the physiology, understanding his mind, understanding his culture, right? And here one more important thing in anthropology is, here we are skewed towards study of the primitive people. So in anthropology and sociology, though we are studying about human beings, here we are more focused or more interested and more skewed towards the study of the primitive human beings in comparison to the modern people. So when we discuss political institutions also, we will be discussing more about the political institutions that exist in primitive societies. Similarly, in the case of marriage, family and everything, right? So anthropology is not just only about the tribal people, but it is more skewed towards the primitive people, their life, their food habits, their culture, and why is it that their customs are like this. So what is the basis behind that? So what are the tribes which are living in different parts of the country, different parts of the world? Just a minute. Okay, so all this, the social institutions, the lifestyle of the tribal people, their culture, their developments, all these we will be discussing. So since sir has already discussed few topics, I will be telling you what are the topics which I will be discussing in paper 1 and paper 2. So in paper 1, I will be discussing many topics in physical anthropology and genetics part. Okay, so I have a master degree in biotechnology, and you need not worry. I will make these topics very simple. That a person from even a person studying in high school also will be able to follow these topics very easily. So I'll be discussing most of the topics like in genetics and about in physical anthropology like chromosomal aberrations. Okay, so that's what majority of the topics in physical anthropology in paper 1, which comes under genetics part, will be discussed by me. In addition to that, I will also be discussing few important culture theories. I'm sure sir has already discussed few theories with you. So let me tell you here, even though sir would have already told you, culture theories and apes part is very, very important in anthropology paper 1. Okay, and culture theories, if you are able to follow culture theories and apes part, because sir would have definitely discussed it in a very simple way that you can understand it easily. So if you are able to understand culture theories and apes part, then definitely all other topics will be very, very easy for you, because usually students find little bit of difficulty in these two topics only, that is in apes and culture theories. But if you have a good understanding of that, rest all other topics will be very, very easy for you. So most of the topics in anthropology paper 2 I will be discussing. So now you have a fairly good idea about what are the topics which we will be studying in paper 1, right? So we will be discussing apes part, that is all the evolutionary aspects, along with physical anthropology, genetics part, and along with an important topic on culture theories, where we discuss various theories of evolution of culture like diffusionism, functionalism, structural functionalism, culture and personality, so on, right? So all these culture theories. But when it comes to paper 2, many people have this idea that paper 2 is just you need not even study, it's very easy. Yes, definitely I will say paper 2 is very, very easy. See, why do I say this? Because here mostly we are studying about the Indian social system, right? About the caste system, about things which we are seeing in our everyday day-to-day life, right? Is there any need for somebody to come and tell you what is a caste, right? Definitely not. So if you're a person who is born and raised in India, automatically you would have come across all this by default, isn't it? So when you go to take admission in school itself, you would have filled a column saying which caste you belong to. So we will be studying about caste, religion, and we will also be discussing simple topics like Purushartha, Rina, rebirth. Okay, so these all come under the traditional basis of Indian social system. What is karma? What is rebirth? What is Rina? All these things. Then what is caste system? So I already told you, if you are born in India and you have been raised in India, I can tell you paper 2 is very, very simple, because there's nothing that it's not like physics or maths which you need to learn from the scratch. It is something which you are witnessing in your day-to-day life, which you're seeing it is happening in the society around you. But the thing is, here we will be able to give you a proper channeled efforts towards understanding that. Say, for example, many of you know what is your caste, right? You know what is caste, that it came because of occupational basis, that many people were following, where a particular community were doing a particular occupation, and over a period of time they specialized in that occupation, and that carried across generations. So this is how probably you would have understood what caste system is. But there are actually various theories for origin of caste system, that is various people postulated theories saying this might have been the reason, this might have been the reason. And what is the caste system exactly serving in today's present day present day society? So is it of any importance? Is it that we need to still stick on to caste system? Is it serving any function in present day scenario, or should we abolish it, right? So like this we will be discussing more things about few things which you already know, right? So then what are the theories of origin of caste? What we mean by caste mobility? What is a dominant caste? So we all know about dominant caste, isn't it? So in any region, any particular region, there will be a community which has a say in everything. Like they will mostly be the land owning community, right? So in villages, if you see if you consider some caste as a dominant caste, so how do you do that? That particular community will be owning a large amount of land holding, right? And they will have large number of people belonging to that community. So like that, this is what we call it as dominant caste. So like that, we will be discussing uh, very much more in detail about what you already know about caste, right? Then we shall be discussing about other simple things like secret complex, nature man spirit complex, okay? And we will be studying about religions, right? We have few religions which had birth in our country and few religions which came from outside. So how did these religions flourish in our country? How did they grow? So what are the impacts which it has had on our people, right? So there are various impacts. Like if you consider the religion which was born in our country, they are Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and so on. And if you consider religions which came from outside, they are Christianity, Islam, and all. So, how did these religions come into our country and how they have transformed the people over here? Have they had an impact on the Indian society? And if so, what is the impact that they have created? What are the contributions of these religions to our Indian society? Say, for example, if you consider Christianity, you can find that a majority of the English education system, that is, education system, English medium schools have had a huge impact by the Christianity. Even now, you can see not just educational institutions but even hospitals also. Most of these, English medium schools are run by Christian missionaries. Okay, so like that, what was the impact which they created on our Indian society? Along with that, we will also be studying about the impact that these religions had on our primitive people, that is, the tribal people who have been living in deep jungles, right? So, how they impacted the common people living in the Indian society, and they also how they impacted the people living in the the primitive people living in the most inaccessible areas, that is the tribal people. So how they impacted those people also. So like that, we will be studying their impact on each, that is the impact of each of these religions on the Indian society as well as the tribal society as well. Then we shall be discussing how exactly did this anthropology subject even begin in our country, right? So from 18th, 19th and 20th century, how they started anthropology as a curriculum for the very first time in Calcutta University, and then who was the founder of the department and what was the need exactly, you know. So when you say anthropology, you might be thinking, so what was the need for this subject to even begin and how did it began actually? So initially the anthropology was, just a compilation of the stories which were narrated and told by people who ventured out of their own country. So there were many people who visited other countries and studied their culture, studied the tribal people's lifestyle, food habits, and so on. And they went back to their own countries and they started writing about the culture of about the place, about the experience which they had with those people, what language they spoke, what food they ate, how their dressing pattern was, what were their customs, what was their belief, what was the religion which they followed. So like this, many people who were, out of curiosity and interest, who ventured out to different regions and and spent some time with them. So those experiences were compiled, and it is not just these people, even the travelers, missionaries, okay, people who went to discover new land. So all these people's experiences were compiled together as monographs. So that was the very, very initial beginnings of how anthropology began. So we will be discussing a lot about this, how anthropology subject actually began in our in our country, and then how it grew and what are the contributions of various anthropologists across various centuries, be it the 18th century, 19th century, 20th century. What are the various contributions which were given by various people and who are the tribal people whom they studied, okay, and what is the present day scenario. So these are all the things which we will be discussing in the historical background, okay. So historical background and the emergence and growth of anthropology. Next, we also have one small chapter on village studies, right? So, village studies. So, is there any need for us to, study and really break our head and understand what a village means? At least most of you all might have visited, even though if you are in cities also, most of you all would have definitely visited villages at least few times in your lifetime, right? So then apart from that, even if you haven't visited any village as such, you must have definitely watched movies which show how Indian villages are, right? So we know what are in Indian villages, how agriculture happens over there. So what is the social system that is over there? How caste system is very important in villages. How there are people who are doing specialize in certain occupations, and how judge money system works, right? So all these things, what is the system which was present long time back, and now how even Indian villages are changing. How what is the what is the impact of joint families? Earlier we had the concept of joint families, but later what are the reasons which led to the disintegration of joint family system, isn't it? Now hardly we have any joint family setup, except a few here and there. But what was the reason for the disintegration of joint family system? So how education and how industrialization changed their way of living. Okay, so now we cannot find that even in villages there is any caste based restriction on occupation. You can find that in villages also people can take up any occupation of their choice, right? So all these things about village, mostly what is their how is a village economy, what is their social system, how is caste system over there, what are the customs and beliefs of these people. So what are the impact that globalization had on the Indian villages. All these very simple topics which we shall discuss in this unit. Then we have this is around half, around half of the paper two, which includes Indian social system and caste studies and village studies. And another important half of the paper two is tribal studies. So what are the tribal people? What we mean by tribe? Whether it has been is what is the definition of a tribe? Has our constitution defined what is the meaning of a tribe? And who are the SCs, that is the scheduled caste, and who are the STs, scheduled tribes? So how a tribe gets included in the list of scheduled tribe? Okay, what are the benefits that they get over there? And most importantly, we will be studying the tribal people of India. We will also be studying a little bit about the tribes in other continents and in other countries as well, but mostly we will be focusing about the tribals in our country. So the northeastern tribes, the central Indian tribes, the central Indian tribes like the Munda, Ho, Birhor, so on. The South Indian tribes like Chenchu, Irula, Kani, Kurumba, Irula, all these tribes, and then northeastern tribes also, and then tribes living in the Andaman and Nicobar like the Andamanis, the Jarawas, the Sentinelese. So who are these people? How do we classify the tribal people according to the location? Like I already told you, there are tribes who are in northeast, so northeastern tribes. Then we can classify tribes as central Indian tribes and south Indian tribes, and then the Andaman Nicobar tribes. So based on the geographical location, how we can classify the tribal people based on their race, right? So already sir has discussed race and racism topic, I guess. So you already know what do we mean by race, isn't it? So based on racial criteria, how we classify these people. So what is their economic status presently? What is their educational status? What is their lifestyle? What is their customs and beliefs? What is the religion which they are practicing? Okay, and who are the most primitive tribes? So even among tribes, we have the concept of PTG and PVTG, right? So what do you mean by PTG? PTG. PTG means primitive tribal groups. That has been renamed as PVTG. PVTG means particularly vulnerable tribal group. Okay, so PTG and PVTG both are the same. So these PVTG are much more backward than the other tribes. So what are the what are the various programs available for the upliftment of these people? So what exactly does nature mean to these people? So that is what we will be discussing in nature man spirit complex. So how their culture, their lifestyle, their way of living is intertwined with nature, and why is it so difficult to rehabilitate or resettle these people into normal society. That is how even though you pull out these people from the jungles and give them all the comforts and facilities of a modern day life, like a house, you give them a piece of agricultural land, you ask them to continue agriculture, and you give them education, everything, still these people are not happy. So what are their, how is their culture, how is their living intertwined with the nature, and what best we can do for these people when we are doing any rehabilitation or resettlement programs. Okay, so we will be studying about various processes of social change. Okay, so in tribal situation we will be discussing the biogenetic variability. That's what I told you. So racial background of these tribes, their what are the languages which they speak, right? Each of these tribes, what are the languages that they speak, what is their educational status, what is their socio-economic status. That is, you can find that few tribes have become very well developed, and they have got integrated very well into the mainstream society. Whereas even now you can find few tribes are very much shy, and they're still living in the deep jungles without any contact with the other human world whatsoever, right? Like some of the tribes in Andaman and Nicobar, the Sentinelese, for example, right? So like this, what is it that makes these tribes unique, and how you can extend the programs, or do something good for these people even though they are not coming in contact with the external world. So like that we will be discussing about the tribal population, their distribution in our country, their educational status, socio-economic status, and what are the programs that have been formulated for them and how far it is progressing. Then we will also be discussing the problems of the tribal communities. So as I already told you, the tribal people live in the most inaccessible areas, right? In the deep jungles where there is scarcity for water, scarcity for food, right? So in these kind of inhospitable climate, or inhospitable conditions, it becomes very difficult for them to lead a normal life. So what are the problems which they face? Like most of the tribal communities face various problems like poverty, okay, unemployment, illiteracy, then various diseases, right? They suffer from various diseases when they come into contact with the mainstream society. They are prone to various diseases. Women are pushed into prostitution, and then they are subjected to various other diseases also because of that. And then they also have lot of health and nutritional problems because of the food habits which they have, and because of the lifestyle also. So what are the various problems that these tribal communities are undergoing, and what are the remedies for that? What are the programs or plans which the government has undertaken so far? So how is it progressing? All these topics we shall be discussing. Then again we will be discussing about the problems of rehabilitation and resettlement of the tribal people. Okay, so as I already told you, when do we go for rehabilitation of the tribals? See, suppose there is a project, you have to construct a dam in the for inside a forest, or you have to do a multi-purpose project, or there is some mining activity which has to happen, or any other activities. So then you have to pull out these tribal people from the jungles and rehabilitate them in some other location. So when that happens, as I already told you, you must have seen many times in despite government putting in the best efforts to give them better conditions than what they had inside the jungle, these people are unhappy. Okay, they come out and they start protesting. Right, we have seen various andolans also, right, like Narmada Bachao Andolan, isn't it? So what exactly is the government missing? So how can we bridge the gap? What is it that the tribal people want, and what is it the government is providing them, and why there is no, why both of them are not happy? So all these things, what is the so what is the So, what are the problems of the tribal communities in rehabilitation and resettlement? So, how it can be resolved. So, these things also we shall be discussing. Then, the problems of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Again, like how the what is the reservation system? Why was the need for to give a reservation for scheduled caste communities and scheduled tribes? What are the exact problems that they have been facing? So because of the reservation system, be it in education sector or be it in the employment sector, so how their lives have improved. So is there a further need to extend the reservation system? So all these are, like a general essay topics which you will already be studying. Since you are preparing for civil services, these are all very, very simple topics which you definitely have to know, right? Be it in any GS paper, you'll have to have a very good idea about all these topics if you have to make good answers. So such simple topics we shall be discussing. Then we should also discuss about Panchayat Raj institutions, right? When Panchayat Raj institutions in village studies. Then what is the concept of ethnicity? And hmm, already, as I told you, we'll be discussing about primitive tribal groups. Okay, what are the role of NGOs? So how we cannot extend our program straight away to the tribal people because of the hindrances in terms of communication in language barriers and so on. It has been found that NGOs are a must, are a much better way of interacting with the tribal people in extending the programs to the tribal people. So what are the NGOs which are available for this purpose? So what are their activities? How do they extend the benefits to the tribal people? All this we shall be discussing here. And then one more important topic is the role of anthropology in tribal and rural development. So after studying so much about anthropology, about what is our society, what is tribal people so attached to the nature, why is their culture, their customs, their belief, their religion, magic, why is it so important to them? So after understanding all this, what we can do is we can try to bridge the gap that is been existing between the government and the tribal people. That is, we can give better solutions because we not just understand the government's side, we can also understand as a we can understand a tribal person's perspective like him, right? That is what we discuss in um, yeah, that is what we discuss in ethnocentrism and cultural relativism, isn't it? So, ethnocentrism means looking at another culture from its point of view. Okay, so suppose we are going to study a culture, we are not going to look at that culture from our basis by comparing it with our own culture, right? Say you can find somebody eating a meat or or some non-vegetarian dish which is not usually consumed in your own culture. So if you look at that person eating that meat or a non-vegetarian food, you should not judge it based on your culture. Instead, you must look at it as a person belonging to that culture. So why is that person consuming that particular food? Because probably that is the only available meat in their region and their environmental conditions are forcing them to have that particular diet, right? So that is what we mean by ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism means looking at a culture from a biased point of view, from your point of view. That is thinking your culture, your own culture is superior in comparison to the other culture and looking at other people's culture as low. Okay, so considering your culture as superior and looking at another culture as inferior is called ethnocentrism. And what do we mean by cultural relativism? Cultural relativism means it is an antidote to ethnocentrism. That is, looking at another person's culture or looking at another culture from a person belonging to that culture. Okay, looking at a culture from their point of view, from their perspective. That is called as cultural relativism. So once we study so much about anthropology, about tribes, their culture and all, we also start understanding the tribal culture, tribal people from their perspective. That is, we become cultural relativists and we stop judging other people, be it for anything, right? So that is a very important change which will happen once we start studying anthropology. Earlier, we must, we might have been having lot of prejudices about, people who are not our own, be it in terms of language, culture, lifestyle, dressing, food habits, okay, whatever it is. we would have had lot of judgments about other people, or we would have had prejudices. Okay, these people will be like this, or these people are like that. They are savages. They are barbaric, right? But once you study anthropology, you will start giving up all these prejudices and biases, and you will start looking at their problems or their culture from their point of view. Okay, that is what we mean by cultural relativism. So anthropology helps us not just in looking at things from a different point of view, but also to understand it from other perspective. So we get a lot of perspectives. Okay. So then we also will be studying about contributions of anthropology in understanding the communication, regionalism, okay, and political movements and so on. So I hope you got a fair idea about what we will be discussing in paper 2 of anthropology. So definitely paper 2 of anthropology is very simple in comparison to paper 1, but I would always suggest that you do not take it lightly. Okay, you need to put the same efforts which you put in for paper 1, but only thing here is there's nothing new which you will be studying, something like some new formula in physics or maths, nothing like that. You are already very familiar with all these concepts just by being born in India and raised in India. But you will be studying a little more in depth about all these things. You would have just had a vague idea about these things, isn't it? Like I told you about caste system. You just had a vague idea about what caste is and which caste or community you belong to. But once you start studying this, you will understand more in depth about these topics. So paper 2 is also very interesting and you can score very well. Okay. Now we shall start off with our first topic for today. Okay. So we shall start off with our first topic for today, that is unit 3.1 in paper 2, the traditional Indian social system. Unit 3.1 in paper 2 anthropology. This is a very simple topic. So let's begin our first class with a simple topic. Traditional traditional Indian social system. Unit 3.1 Traditional Indian Social System, its structure and nature. Under that, we will be discussing topics Purushartha, Varnashram, Karma, Dina, and Rebirth. Traditional Indian social system. What do we mean by traditional? Tradition. What is a tradition? So, tradition is a custom or a belief that has existed since a very long time, isn't it? So, traditions, we can see traditions in our everyday life. So, when we greet our elders, we say namaste, that is a tradition, right? So, we light a lamp in our homes in the evening, okay? So, that is a tradition. We go to temples, okay, on festivals. or on auspicious days we go to temple, we pray to God, that is a tradition. And our dressing, right? Say when I wear a sari, it is a tradition. When I wear a suit, it is a tradition, right? So there are various traditions which we have been following in our everyday life, right? As soon as we wake up in the morning, many of us have this practice of looking at God's photo and then beginning our day, saying a prayer and then beginning our day, right? So all these are traditions. So tradition is a custom or a belief that has been existing since a very long time, right? So is Indian society traditional? Yes or no? Is Indian society traditional? Many of you all might agree, yes, Indian society is definitely traditional. Most of our population are very traditional in nature, and we still follow the traditions which have been carried out, which had been practiced by our ancestors since several generations. And even today we practice that, and we are also teaching our children, our next future generations to follow those traditions. So definitely Indian society is traditional. But there might be some of you all who might say that no, no, India is not a traditional society anymore. It has changed a lot. India has becoming more and more westernized. We are accepting all Western concepts and be it our food, right? Like our McD and whatever Western food habits which we are following, the lifestyle which we are following, and the thinking, the ideologies which we are following. So, most people will argue that India is no more traditional, we are becoming more westernized. And I do not accept that India is a traditional society. But we need to understand that most of these Western concepts or Western lifestyle, food habits, everything you can find mostly in urban areas only. Even if you go back to our villages now also, you can find that most of the people are still living in a very, very traditional way, following age old customs, beliefs, religion, right? Caste system, whatever. So they are still following the traditional way of life, which was followed and practiced by our ancestors since several generations. And as we all know that Indian society, India is predominantly present in its villages. So we cannot just look at the urban areas of our country and say India is westernized. So since majority of the population is still traditional, we can definitely say that Indian society is traditional, but still we can say that change is happening. Okay, change is definitely happening. We have abolished sati system, isn't it? We have once upon a time, you know, thinking of second marriage was not a possibility at all. But now you can find that many people are going for divorce and they are going for second marriage also. So where there are various things which have been changing. So once upon a time, these traditions were very much strict. People could not afford to think about People could not afford to think about moving out of a marriage if they are happy or unhappy. But now things are changing, right? So even though there is change that is happening constantly, you can say that India is predominantly still a traditional country. Okay, Indian society is still predominantly traditional. Then here we also have to understand that we mostly interchange these words, that is tradition, conservative and orthodox, right? So what is actually the difference between these? So I told you what is the meaning of traditional, right? So tradition means the customs or beliefs which we have been following since age old times, right? Our great ancestors were following that. Then they passed on to various generations, and we are also following it, and we are also transmitting it to our future generations. So this is what we mean by tradition. So what we mean when we say conservative, okay. So when we say some person is conservative or some culture is conservative or some process which you're following is very conservative. What do we exactly mean? So conservative, I can tell you in terms of a person. Okay. Conservative means a person who is averse to change, who is not willing to change. That is what we mean by conservative. So a conservative person does not want to accept something new and he holds on to the old traditional values. That is what we mean by conservative. I can give you an example. Say I wear a sari. I can call myself traditional, right? So I will wear a sari when I go to a temple or when I go for a puja or some religious occasion, then I will wear a sari. Say, then you can call me traditional. But suppose I have to go to a gym and work out. Can I wear a sari and go there? It won't be functional, right? So it becomes so difficult. It is not a attire which you can go to and work out in a gym. So if I still follow that, that means I'm conservative. I'm holding on to my old traditional values and I'm not willing to change. That is what we mean by conservative. Then what we mean by orthodox? Right, many of y'all would have been complaining that your parents are very orthodox, conservative and all. So we use these terms very frequently and interchange it very much, but we don't know the exact meaning of those, right? So orthodox means anyone who adheres to the religious norms, beliefs, customs, values. Okay, so and even the conventional things of doing certain things, right? And they abide by all the religious doctrines. Such people can be called as orthodox people. That is very religious people who follow all the norms, values, the everything that has been mentioned in the religious doctrines, and they do not change it for anything. Such people can be called as orthodox. So I think now you have a fairly good idea about what we mean by traditional, what we mean by conservative, and what we mean by orthodox. So you understand now what it means. That is, when we say traditional, Indian society is predominantly traditional. Okay. So here, when we say traditional Indian social system, so I already in the beginning when I gave you introduction, I told you about various religions. So whether in our country, in India, if you see that it is a melting pot of races, right? You can find there is so much of diversity in our country, right? That is why we aptly give the slogan to ourselves saying unity in diversity. Our country is so diverse that you can find changes, not it is not like you find change only from a person belonging to extreme north and a person belonging to south. It is not like that. Recently, I was watching a talk by Sudha Murthy. I guess all of you know who is Sudha Murthy. She is the wife of Infosys Narayan Murthy, who was the co-founder of Infosys organization. So she was telling that she runs an NGO for the welfare of various for various activities in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra also, and to certain extent even in Haryana also. So she has a NGO which works for caters for all this, be it for educational purpose, for rural development, and all these for welfare of women and so on. So she was giving a talk, and I happened to listen to this. And she says that the culture in our country changes with every 150 kilometers. Okay, so within Karnataka also, or within Andhra, or within UP, or within Punjab, anywhere you move in the country, for every Okay, so for every 150 kilometers, you can see changes in the culture. So what do we mean by changes in culture? You can find the changes in the language which they speak. It's not like they will speak an entirely different language, but at least the way they speak, okay, that will vary. The food habits, there will be slight variations in the food habit because of the grains which they are growing in that particular region. And then you can find to a certain extent changes in their lifestyle, be it in the dresses which they wear, the customs which they follow, the belief, everything, right? So if you see throughout the country, we have people belonging to so many diverse backgrounds. We have so many castes, we have so many religions, right? We have people speaking so many languages, and we have, I can tell you, more number of gods than the number of population in our country. Yes or no? Right? So you can, every street you can find one new god would have taken birth, right? So like that we have so much of diversity in our country. So when we hear say about Indian social system, fortunately, in anthropology, when we speak, we are considering only the Hindu social system. So we are all lucky that here we will be studying about the basis of only Hindu social system, and we will not be going into depth of other religions. As I already told you, yes, there are religions which took birth in our country, like the Hinduism, Islam, not Islam, Buddhism, Jainism, and all. Then the Islam religion came from Middle East, and then Christianity came from European countries. So like that, though India had religions which were strong enough, which had birth and were strong enough in their own soil, still we had these religions coming into our country, and we were welcome to it. We welcomed it, and there are people belonging to all these other religions also coexisting with us, right? So we have so many religions, but still when we speak in an anthropological perspective as per our anthropology syllabus, when we mean Indian social system, we are referring to Hindu social system. So fortunately, we will be studying only the basis of the Hindu social system, like the Purushartha, Rina, Rebirth, Ashrama, Karma, and all this. And we will not be going into other religious, into the traditional basis of other religions like Christianity or Islam and so on. However, we will also be studying these other religions in the later chapters. Like I told you, we will be studying how these religions came into our country, what are the impact that it has. So in each of these religions, what is their population, what is their distribution in our country, what is their educational status, what is their socio-economic status, then what are the contributions of each of these religions to the Indian society, what is the contribution of each of these religions to the tribal, okay, how they impacted the life of the tribal people. All these things we will be studying. So that time we will be discussing more about other religions like Islam, Christianity, Jainism, Buddhism and all. But as per this chapter is concerned, even when you get a question in your examination, when it says write about the traditional or the basis of the traditional Indian social system, here your examiner will be expecting you to write about the Hindu social system only, and they will not be expecting you to write anything about the other religions. Okay, so I hope this is clear, right? So when we mean Indian social system in anthropological perspective, we are referring to Hindu social system. So here we will be studying topics like Purushartha. Just give me a minute. Purushartha. Purushartha. What do you mean by Purushartha? So, Purush. You know what's the meaning of Purush, right? Purush means man or human being, right? Or person. Purusha means person, and Artha means purpose. Okay, Purushartha. So Purushartha is a Sanskrit word which can be split into Purush and Artha. Purush means person and Artha means purpose. Okay, this is a Sanskrit word. So this is a very important word in Hinduism, which means Purushartha means the four goal orientations of life. That is, in Hinduism, there are four goals which every Hindu should follow. Those four goals of life is called as Purushartha. Okay, did you understand? So, according to Hinduism, every Hindu is supposed to follow four important goals or aims or goal orientations in life. And those four goals or aims is called as Purushartha. The word Purushartha is a Sanskrit word which comes from the words Purush, which means person, and Artha, which means purpose. Okay. So, what are the four goals or four aims which a Hindu should follow in his lifetime? They are dharma, artha, kam, and moksha. So, what do you mean by Purushartha? Purushartha refers to the four goals or goal orientations or four aims which a Hindu should follow in his life. Okay, what are those four Purusharthas or the four goals? First one is Dharma, second one is Artha, and third one is Kama, and fourth one is Moksha. Okay, so you should always study these four goals in this order only, and even in your exam also you have to write it in this order only, and later I will be telling you why it is supposed to be followed in this order only. Okay, so the four goal orientations, that is dharma, artha, kama and moksha, are the four goals which a Hindu should follow during his lifetime in the different ashrama stages. So even the ashrama stages I will be discussing shortly. So these four goals which have to be followed by a Hindu in his lifetime according to the ashrama stage which he belongs to is called as Purushartha. So what is the purpose of this Purushartha? So next I will be telling you what is the meaning of each of these and in which ashrama stages they should be followed and so on. So what is the purpose of this Purushartha? Why is it so important that a Hindu should follow these during his lifetime? We will be discussing that now. Okay. So it is said that the Purusharthas are the basis of a human life, and it is based on these four Purusharthas that the human life rotates. Okay, so based on these four Purusharthas of Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha, the human life rotates around these four Purusharthas. Okay, and it is the basis for a human being's life. That is, you have to keep these as a foundation in whatever you do in your life. That is, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha in different ashrama stages form the building blocks of your life. Okay, say Dharma should be followed across all the ashrama stages, right? From the very beginning till the end of your life, you definitely have to follow the first Purushartha Dharma. Whereas Artha, Kama, Moksha have to be followed in certain ashrama stages, which I will be discussing. So these are the building blocks or the foundation of the life around which a person's life revolves. So Purusharthas are not just simple aim or goals, it is the building blocks of the life of human beings on which they have to revolve.